Okay, we'll keep an eye out for any new participants, but we're after 6 o'clock here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Just to kick things off, my name is Eric Lint. I am the Secretary and Treasurer of the Old Farm Neighborhood Association. Our chair is taking a sick day today, and our vice chair is currently in another meeting with the city. He may join us later once that is finished, but we'll go ahead and get started here as we've got a quorum. And first off, I'd like to introduce all of the Old Farm board members. So if you guys could go around, unmute yourselves and say hi, and then we'll introduce everyone else here.
I'm Beth Larson, member at large. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
I guess I'm Jen at large and a hype girl for the neighborhood associations.
Colette Blumeister here and member at large also. Thank you.
And I don't see Karen joining us yet. She's our land use chair. Hopefully she'll come along later because we've got a lot of land use updates for you guys. If she can't make it though, I'll go ahead and cover some of that stuff. Before we get into the Murphy Road project, we've got a big presentation from the Murphy Corridor project team tonight. They're going to show off what's going on and what's coming next. We've got a few people in the crowd here, and we traditionally give everyone a chance to say hi and introduce themselves and to the neighborhood and tell us a little bit about yourselves. And I'm going to highlight one before we get to the city staff and others. We've got Jason Kropf here, and he's a candidate for House District 54. He's currently a Ben Parks and Rec board member, and so you might have seen him around town at some of our meetings here. So Jason, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and it's okay to give your campaign pitch too.
Eric, thanks. Nice seeing you again. Thanks everybody from your neighborhood association having me here today. My name is Jason Kropf, and I'm running to represent Ben in the State House, House District 54. I spent most of my, I worked out of the Dick's Attorney's Office. Before that, I was a public defender here in town. I've spent a large part of my career working in our juvenile justice system. Not that long ago, I was in court with a young man, and I'd known that young man for a few years through my juvenile work. And I knew that he had not been able to graduate high school. I knew that he had struggled with addiction issues since he was early teen. And the last time I was in court with him, we asked him, what do you want for yourself? What do you want for your future? And what he told us was this most recent time he was in jail, he missed his daughter's first birthday. And that when he was growing up as a kid, his dad wasn't around very much. And what he said is he wanted to be a father to his daughter. And it made me realize how much I had in common with that young man, that we both shared the same determination to be good fathers. And I left court that day optimistic about him. In my work, I've seen people make real incredible changes in their life. And I believe redemption exists for just about everybody. But I also left court that day thinking about that young man's daughter and wondering if she would have everything that she needs to thrive. Myself, I grew up in Malala. Does anybody know where Malala is? So Malala is a small logging town over on the west slope of the Cascades. So I grew up on the farm that my grandparents had started. And when I was a kid, I was surrounded by this large extended family. I was close to my neighbors. I was connected to my teachers. And looking back, I realized I was never alone when I was a kid. Whenever I was in trouble or in crisis, I always had somebody to call for help or for support. I think as we're learning from, and that never being alone, that support, that was my launching pad. It led me to graduate high school and go on to college and go on to law school here in Oregon, paved the way for my career, and really inspired me to dedicate myself to make sure everybody has their own launching pad. As we've seen through the COVID pandemic, George Floyd's murder and the rallies and protests that have followed, we need to do better. The way things were just wasn't good enough. We've left too many people like that young man and his daughter behind. I'm running for State House because I believe we can do better. better to me means making sure we have a fully funded school system so every kid is prepared for their future, so every kid has a chance to reach their fullest potential. It means making sure everybody has access to the medical and mental health care that they need and that we're reducing those costs. It means that we tackle the affordable housing crisis, especially right here in our community, make sure everybody has a roof over their head, that if you work in Bend, you can afford to live in Bend. And make sure we're doing all we can to protect our natural environment, make sure that we are combating climate change and being a leader in that fight. And to me, it also means that we're doing all we can to end systemic racism and fight the inequalities that have existed for too long in our community. I appreciate you having me here this evening, and I would really appreciate your support in the fall and help me push Bend and Oregon forward. Thanks for having me. I'm going to stick around because the number of the things on your presentation are of particular interest to me. And if anybody has any questions at the end, I'd love to chat. And also, I do serve on the Parks Board. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts or comments about the Op and Go project that we're starting up down in your part of town. So thank you for having me this evening.
All right, thanks for that, Jason. And just a heads up, we're going to have other candidates come in. We had city council candidates come in, and typically we allow a little period at the beginning here as part of the public comment. So look forward for more of that ahead of November. So if we have anyone else in the audience that would like to say hi, we typically go round robin style here, but everyone's screen usually looks different. So if you like, just go ahead and unmute yourself and say hi and what you're interested in learning tonight.
Hey, this is Liz and Jeff. We live off Ferguson. We're south of Ferguson, and we back up to the open land that soon will be developed. But we're here for the Murphy Road update. Really interested in what to hear about that.
Any other takers? So our meetings are generally pretty loose and conversational. We'll have some bullet points according to the agenda, but we will have opportunity to have a question and answer with the Murphy team and some of our other agenda items. So stick around if you've got more questions or let us know now. And there is also the chat box here as well. So feel free to take advantage of that as well. With that, let's go ahead and get to the Murphy project.
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. My name is George Franklin. I'm the project manager for the city for the Murphy Corridor Improvements Project. And I'm probably a new face and a new name to you because that role was previously occupied by Garrett Saberin. So I just want to let you know that Garrett is still involved in the project as a consultant. So he left his role with the city a few months back and joined a consultant that had an ongoing contract with the city on the Murphy Corridor Improvements Project. And so it's really fortunate for the project overall and for myself, and I think a number of us, that Garrett is still involved. He brings a lot of history, institutional knowledge about the project, and that's retained by keeping him involved. So I believe he is on the call as well. I think I saw him earlier. Yeah, I do see him. So in case there are some questions that come up during the course of or after the presentation that I'll share, Garrett's available to address those as well. And so with that, I think I'll go ahead and jump into the presentation. Let's see if I can share my screen smoothly. Okay. And I'm not familiar with Zoom, so I want to make sure you can see that opening slide. Okay.
Looks good. You might be able to go full screen if you like as well.
Oh, okay. Let's try that. There we go.
Yep, looks good.
A little better. Okay. Yeah. So once again, my name is George Franklin. I've been with the city Just short of 6 years. No, just a little over 6 years doing capital improvement projects in the engineering department. Worked with Garrett for a number of years before he decided to move on. And I want to acknowledge to the Old Farm District Neighborhood Association for the partnership that we've been able to strike with this neighborhood association for this project. I felt that we've had a lot of good dialogue over the course of it. I was principal engineer for the project even when Garrett was involved. I was just much less in the weeds when Garrett was involved. So yeah, I really want to thank everybody for their involvement and their input that they've provided over the course up to this point for the Murphy project. A map that you've probably seen before to essentially define the whole scope of the project. So in terms of its purpose, it's actually, you know what, is there a way I can minimize on the right side of my screen, there's people's screens. Is there a way I can minimize that? Oh, I think I might have found it. Sorry about that. There we go. So I can see the whole screen. So this is an overall slide that shows the scope of the Murphy project as a whole, all the phases. So you may also recall that the city decided to do a progressive design build process for this project, which is different than you know, a low bid type project. It relies on qualifications of the progressive design build team to engage as a team member with the city to complete the project. And in this case, there's a number of sub-projects to complete this project. Very, very wide in scope with a number of components that not only are individual and distinct, but also based on the way the progressive design build team has decided to actually construct the project, certain pieces are sometimes split between different construction packages. So one of the terminologies that's used in progressive design build, or PDB, is guaranteed maximum price, GMPs. And those are essentially the construction packages that are used to stepwise through a project to get it designed and constructed. And generally those GMP packages were selected and recommended by the PDB team to essentially build the project in a fashion that hopefully minimizes disruption, but also makes sense in terms of the sequence of construction for the overall project itself. So what you'll see as far as the scope of the overall project are some of the sub-projects that have been completed and that you're aware of, and also the current one that's ongoing, and then the future one that was just approved by City Council last Wednesday, which is the 5th and final guaranteed maximum price, GMP 5. So you'll notice that GMPs 1, 2, and 3 are completed and are shown as the roundabout at 15th Street, excuse me, the roundabout at Broster House Road, excuse me, and not shown is the first GMP, which was some early work that we coordinated with the school district on 15th Street. GMP 4 is currently ongoing, and that's shown in the brown color and labeled as a modernization from Brown Trout, of the modernization of Murphy Road from Brown Trout to the east side of Country Club Drive. So I have some slides a little bit later in the presentation that show the progress of that, but that's currently ongoing and is scheduled to be completed late this summer. And then GMP 5, which is the 5th and final GMP for the project, includes 3 really important components. One of which, or the first of which, is planned for construction is the roundabout at Country Club Drive in Murphy, shown with a dark black circle there at that intersection. The second is the modernization of Murphy between the existing roundabout at Peril Road and the new roundabout at Country Club Drive. And then the third And really keystone piece of the entire project is the extension of Murphy Road between Broster House and 15th Street. So between those two new roundabouts at Broster House and 15th. It includes the extension, which you've seen over the course of the last year. You've seen some fill being placed for the road extensions on either side of the railroad. And then it also includes the actual railroad overcrossing bridge over the railroad. The benefits for the project, the project is intended to significantly improve emergency medical services and fire response times in critical neighborhoods in Southeast Bend. There's a lot of change going on in Southeast Bend, and we wanted to be able to be at the forefront in terms of being able to improve the safety and connectivity and mobility in that area. And that keystone piece of the Murphy project, the overcrossing and the extension between 15th and Broster House, is really key to that. Wanted to reiterate that it is a fully funded project in our transportation plan. And for those not aware, it was the GMP 5, the last and final GMP for the project, was approved by council last Wednesday.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please, yes.
Is this going to include any part of the sewer extension project on Greenmont or that area?
No, and I'm not. Are you referring to the septic sewer program?
Yes.
Okay, no, that there is a very, very small piece of the septic to sewer program that where we overlap, and that is the extension of the existing sanitary sewer connections along Murphy Road to extend them to meet the wider right-of-way that will be resulting from the modernization of Murphy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just a little bit more background. Previously, the two roundabouts at 15th and Broster House have been completed as part of earlier GMPs. The current modernization is ongoing. I believe this, well, I won't speak to the picture, but the current modernization of Murphy Road is ongoing between Brown Trout and Country Club Drive. And I mentioned earlier the future construction with Country Club Roundabout, modernization of Country Club between Country Club and Peril, and then the overcrossing of Murphy. Completed improvements, just a couple of quick photographs to show the completed improvements. This photograph on the left is the 15th Street roundabout. And the photograph on the right is the Broster House roundabout. You can see the extension to the east, just slightly east of the existing roundabout, that will be then the extension for Murphy Road towards 15th. And then a couple of aerial photos that were taken on Friday, July 31st, so just Friday before last, showing the modernization of Murphy Road between Broster House and Country Club. Paving is starting to be installed, sidewalks and curbs and curb returns for some on-street parking are installed. This photograph on the right shows the existing temporary construction detour that was installed for that portion of Murphy. There will be a similar situation for the Country Club roundabout construction. That area will be restored for that temporary detour as part of GMP4, removing that detour obviously and completing the improvements to Country Club. I think what you'll see now, I drove through last week. I think if you were to drive through now, they are doing some utility work on the west end of that portion of the project before paving can be completed. And then GMP 5 is shown here in 3 separate slides for the 3 separate components. First of which that I'll talk about here is the Country Club roundabout. As you can see, it's also planned to be a concrete roundabout, single lane. Oh, and just to note, north on this graphic goes to the left. So Country Club goes north-south, but is shown crosswise on this graphic. So single lane, concrete roundabout. And the temporary bypass road that I mentioned earlier that will be installed, there will be a full closure here at Murphy and Country Club to facilitate the construction of this roundabout. There will be a shoe fly or temporary bypass road constructed on the southeast quadrant of the roundabout, shown there with the call out. The construction or preparation for the construction of that detour should be happening literally any day. So you should see some activity out there. And if you're curious what that is, that's related to that bypass road construction. Part of this roundabout is also the extension of the sidewalk on the west side of Country Club Drive to the intersection with Fairway. So there will be sidewalks extended and curb ramps installed opposite of the Country Club itself. The second piece is the modernization Country Club from between Country Club and Peril, the existing roundabout at Peril. This shows that the extent of those improvements. It'll be similar in terms of it'll be a 3-lane section along that stretch of road, which includes a 2-way center left turn lane, shared use paths on both sides of Murphy Road. So both on the north and south sides will have shared use paths. On the north, I believe widths varying from 8 to 10 feet and slightly narrower at 6 feet on the south side. Lighting installed at each pedestrian crossing at each intersection. So each intersection will include pedestrian crossings and lighting. There is a protected pedestrian crossing just east of Benham Road, which my understanding is the study had indicated that would be the location of the highest pedestrian use. So that was located just east of Benham Road. Also will be well lit. And then shows on the east end how it connects over to Country Club Roundabout. Oh, and it's hard to see at this scale, but it will include bike lanes along both sides of Murphy Road. So those are buffered bike lanes, which means there's I believe it's a 2-foot, essentially double fog line with 2 feet between them that separates the bike lane from the vehicle lane. And then the third component, the keystone, really, I think, of the whole project is the extension of Murphy between Broster House and 15th. So this graphic shows the extension of Murphy from the new existing Broster House roundabout. It gains grade in order to get up over the railroad to meet the railroad's clearance requirements. So there are some large retaining walls that support that grade that face both the subdivisions to the north and south. Those walls have an architectural treatment, both in terms of texture and color, that face those existing neighborhoods. Oh, did somebody have a question?
Yeah, just quickly, what's the time frame for that bridge? And we heard a rumor that the city doesn't have easement with the railroad, so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that, and that may delay you a bit.
The timing is again, this is a progressive design build project. So it is it progresses in real time, I guess is one way to put it. And so we're working directly with the contractor and the engineer to put things in motion to get the bridge constructed. Actual bridge construction right now is scheduled for, I believe it's first part of next year for the actual bridge, because all the embankment has to be built up and those walls constructed as we approach the Burlington Northern Crossing. However, we are continually working with Burlington Northern on agreements that are required for that bridge crossing, both for the bridge itself and the utilities that are on it. I'd say we're on schedule. as much as working with the railroad can be, called on schedule. We're in direct contact with them and are working through those, essentially the legal process to be able to sign off on those agreements enabling that bridge overcrossing. So not expecting any delays for that bridge construction. Working with a large organization such as Burlington Northern Railroad, just takes some time. And I think Garrett and the design build team has done a terrific effort to this point in making sure that expectations are met and there's no surprises for Burlington Northern. So I would say that is still the case, even to the point of having accelerating some certain fabrication for certain portions of the bridge that are needed later on in the wintertime. So feeling pretty good about the schedule for the bridge itself. You'll notice though that very soon, sometime probably later this month, there'll be an increased activity on the embankment construction as we prepare for the wall construction. So any further questions on that?
No, thank you. Appreciate your response.
Oh, sure. Let's see. And as far as the features for this portion of the job, there is an accessible pedestrian connection to the south, to the Hidden Hills neighborhood. So that includes a ramp. And I actually have a rendering, 3D rendering that I'll share on a later slide showing that accessible connection that pedestrians can access that subdivision via a ramp or via a stairway on the east side of that connection. And then of course there's the bridge itself. I've got a rendering that shows that I'm anxious to share. If somebody else has a question?
I actually have a question, but I want you to finish where you're at right now. On the previous slide, you showed a pedestrian crossing by Benham, and I have questions about that.
Okay, sure, we can go back to that. Yeah, so the Burlington Northern Railroad Bridge, that has been coordinated with, I do have a rendering that shows that later on in the presentation, but it's also been coordinated with the Parks and Recreation District for a potential trail location. There you'll also see that there's some utility access. It's a gravel road that essentially gives our utility department access to the existing southeast interceptor manholes that are to the north of the new Murphy Road extension. And there's also been coordinated a driveway to the future Alpengold Park development by Bend Parks and Recreation District. And that's shown to the nearest to the 15th Street roundabout there. And I can go back to the previous slide. So the Benham Road crossing.
Yeah. What are you guys doing for calming measures in there? Because that is currently a drag strip for some folks, and it's also on a blind corner.
In terms of calming measures, the fact, and without having the actual sheet, you can't really see it at this scale. So it is a protected pedestrian crossing, which means it has curbs that somebody can curb, and a refuge area that somebody can cross half the street at a time and then takes refuge between the curbs as they cross the rest of it. So the fact that it's a curbed area tends to signal to drivers that it's a slower speed area, just the visual narrowing of the corridor. Garrett, I'd be curious if you had anything further to say about that particular crossing. I think that's about all I can say about that.
Yeah, I'm not the design engineer, but I got involved a lot with this location, and we might have even talked about it at a previous Old Farm meeting. It's kind of fun being virtual because I can pull up documents and have a good reference to these. And I was trying to scan through our traffic engineering report because I didn't want to misstate information, I'll keep scrolling through it. But if I remember right, when we look at corridors and we talk about whether or not there's speeding issues, we look at the 85th percentile and see whether or not speeds are, roughly within 5 miles an hour of that. if I remember right here, the 85th percentile was somewhere around like 34 on a 35-mile-an-hour road. However, you know, there's definitely an issue with the curvature of the road as you're going to the east of Benham Road, right at Mel Court. So right now, that horizontal curve is not designed per, you know, AASHTO, which is our national standards for roadway design. So there's some sight visibility issues there. There's, you know, for pedestrians, when vehicles are going around, they can't see far enough down the road to be able to stop or yield in time for pedestrians per those standards. And that curvature also doesn't support, you know, design standards for that speed of a roadway. So a couple of things that we were doing, or we are doing with this project is so there's the safe crossing at Benham, but then as you get into that curve, there's updating that to meet, you know, those national standard requirements. We're also, if you're familiar here, there's a big rock outcropping just to the south where there used to be some drainage issues at one point that the city took care of a few years ago. And so we're going to be laying that outcropping back a bit more to open up those sight lines as well. Not to say that that's going to fully address the way that people go around that corner right now, or slow speeds of those, you know, people outside that 85th percentile who go around that corner excessively fast. You know, typically those few who do that are needing enforcement to help with regulating those. It doesn't necessarily warrant a change to our roadway configuration. So.
Okay, well, I live on Benham Road, not too far from Murphy. And I can tell you the fact that there's a curve there does not slow people down. It never has. And what sort of, you said, have you spoken to the neighbors about the light pollution that's going to be in this area? Because there's a gentleman that lives on that corner who's going to be affected by whatever lighting you put in there. And I'm just curious if you guys inform him that that is going to be changing.
Yeah, I think that, well, this is George. I cannot say I personally have spoken with that gentleman. Garrett, don't know if you want to chime in or not yet, but I will say that it's important to light those pedestrian crossings, particularly this protected one that is not right at an intersection. But I think the lighting, in addition to the visual narrowing that I was describing earlier, is important from a safety consideration for that crossing in particular.
Of course, it's a safety precaution and whatnot, but I'm going to let you know. I'm going to speak this out right now so y'all know that is not a good spot for a pedestrian crossing.
Noted, and I, you know, certainly can, I know there's a history of how that location was identified in terms of its anticipated to be the highest future use.
Was that a computer or was that done by humans?
I think it was modeling generally.
So what is modeling? Can you specify, please?
Computer modeling.
Okay.
It's a combination. It's a combination of that, the modeling, but they go out and they collect, you know, pedestrian, bicyclist, vehicular movements, and try to project what it's going to look like in 20 years. And I just pulled up the 85th percentile. It's, like I said, it's fun to have the documents, but it is posted at 35. The 85th percentile is actually 29, so it was a little lower than I thought. Not to say that there's not still people who are going at excessive speeds, but once again, you know, a two-stage crossing like is there, as George was explaining, is a safer crossing, so you only have to go one lane at a time. And then we're opening up those sight lines at that corner to the east there to try to improve that pedestrian and vehicular visibility.
All right. So for the record, as someone who lives on Benham Road, who often takes a left onto Murphy Road, that is not the best spot for a pedestrian crossing. And I think it would behoove y'all to talk to the people who will be affected by the light pollution of that pedestrian crossing right there.
Just to butt in a little bit though, Old Farm actually did talk about some of this stuff in the early phases of the Murphy crossing, and we strongly advocated to have crossings, including safe crossings with lighting, because that really improves access for folks. And our big deal was having these shared use paths that can encourage multimodal transportation in the area. So we did provide input advocating for some of this.
Yeah, we appreciate that, and yeah, fully understand that this has been an ongoing dialogue. And I will say too that in terms of the lighting, you know, this is something that we deal with not just on this project. You know, it's something that that residents, it's a change to, particularly with this section of Murphy that's an established corridor, and there are a few things we can do, you know, to address it in terms of installing shields and for the new LED lights that are installed. But it's fairly limited, but you know, I'm certainly willing to well, I was going to say knock on doors, but that really isn't necessarily an option these days. But
Well,
you know,
I can go down to the neighbor and speak to him. I have no problem with that. Let him know that this is going on there. I will gladly do that.
it's well within your rights to do that. Absolutely.
Yes, but I do not agree with this pedestrian crossing being right there. After what I've seen flying down Murphy Road and that curve right there, like how much is it going to cost to take off that rock outcropping? And is there any other place for this to go?
Well, I will say that just a couple of responses that judging the current conditions with what will be the future conditions, that's, you know, that's what the modeling is for. And so, like,
Did you take into consideration the modeling that we're now adding 795 units off of Country Club and also off of Murphy? Was that in the model and the possible
like Garrett indicated, the models are designed to predict traffic 20 years into the future. That includes planned developments, that includes the zoning for particular vacant lands, and then predicting what trips those would generate as those are built out over the next 20 years. That's a pretty typical requirement of that modeling. And so really the two-step process that Garrett had spoken to, which was you actually take traffic counts, which includes different modes of transportation, take those counts, apply them to the model so that you can calibrate the model against what you actually observe at this point in time. And once that calibration is done, then you run the model to predict what the future might hold. And so it's a multi-step process. It doesn't take into account future growth while still trying to calibrate the model for existing conditions.
Okay. Well, as a human who lives on Benham, I'm going to once again reiterate, this is a terrible spot for this pedestrian crossing, and I highly, highly recommend you guys find an alternative.
The alternatives were Tapadera, and they have higher speeds at the other crossings. I think that was why Benham was selected, and the style of protected crossing is exactly what we actually requested as part of the neighborhood street safety program at other locations, such as on Reed Market. So this is kind of like the standard that we're going for.
So this is Beth. Wouldn't it make a little bit more sense to put that crossing on the other side of Benham Road so that no one's making a left-hand turn into it? If it's right where the D is in Murphy Road, if you put it over there, nobody would be, right? People would just be turning right off of Benham. That would be the only, you see what I mean? Where it is right now, anybody that makes a left-hand turn goes fast, especially if somebody's going to be flying around that corner where Mill Court is. So wouldn't it make more sense to at least put it on the other side of Benham so that no one's making a left-hand turn into that pedestrian crosswalk?
That's kind of like what we saw on Reed Market is we tried
Yeah.
to not put them on that side where there's a left turn lane if the other side doesn't have one.
Yeah,
Because it would require either shutting down that option to turn that direction entirely or restructuring the street.
Yeah, that's something, honestly, that's something I would have to, and I'm certainly willing to do that, revisit it with a design engineer. Unless, Garrett, you can, whether you're able to speak to whether that was a consideration, getting to the point we're at now.
Yeah, I could chime in. It's basically what Eric had mentioned, where if you have a vehicle that's trying to make a left onto Benham Road, so that's the only turning movement that you would experience coming off Murphy onto Benham. So they're coming from Peril, going towards Benham, wanting to take a left. If you have a pedestrian refuge island in that center turn lane, they're required or forced to stay in that eastbound travel lane. And basically what they would have to do is stop at that intersection until there's no vehicles coming from the alternate direction until they can make that turn. You know, today, right now, the volumes of vehicles are low enough that they're probably going to experience that gap relatively quickly. But as the volume increases down in Southeast Bend and those gaps between vehicles decrease, then vehicles start making that turning movement in more riskier scenarios, and it becomes more of a safety issue. And so, you know, ideally you're building this 3-lane section out here so that you have that center turn lane for vehicles that want to turn into driveways or turn on to intersecting streets, and you're not obstructing that. And so on the east side of Benham, you don't have that, but you do, as you said, you do have vehicles coming out of Benham onto Murphy to go eastbound. And that's something, you know, where a pedestrian does have to look over their shoulder and make sure that there isn't a car, or, you know, look at that, even though a car is supposed to yield. So I get it, that, you know, the challenge between the two, but this is the best of those two options to, you know, utilize the benefits of the increased width of the roadway and provide additional safety.
Are you guys, would you consider putting those lights, that the pedestrian crossing lights that you have on like 3rd Street? I'm concerned about people also heading west on Murphy Road, on that curve right by Mel Court. They come flying around that area. Well, first of all, they come flying down our street because they're trying to avoid peril for whatever reason. But they also, when they're heading west, go flying around that corner, and people got signs up and everything, and they don't yield to that curve.
So are you referring
Does that
to
make sense?
the pedestrian flashing beacons like you see on the arterials and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, right. So even if you could put them closer to Broadmoor, or some signaling something before they hit that curve, I'm legitimately concerned with how fast people come out of roundabouts and then are heading down Murphy Road. They think it's a drag strip, like we hear it all the time. And so when people are coming out of the Country Club roundabout and heading west on Murphy Road, they go flying around that corner by Mel Court, and how will they know that somebody's in that pedestrian crosswalk? Could you put up some flashing lights somewhere east of that crosswalk to let people know?
Oh, to indicate there's somebody there now. I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I'd say moving it further east in terms of the location of the crossing itself. If I understood you correctly, there was maybe a thought that one could do that. But I think the reason for its location where it is, in addition to what Garrett had talked about in terms of left turning movements, is that it's somewhat centrally located along that section of the corridor. So to move it, you know, east of Mel Court, for example, or even closer to Mel Court, it would be less centrally located. And then the crossings at the new Country Club roundabout essentially are fairly close by for somebody to use. In terms of the pedestrian warnings, I'd say generally those types of safety considerations are on higher volume roads typically. And I understand that there are people that choose to drive over the speed limit, unfortunately. And you know, there always seems to be some outliers that do that. That's just the nature of driving. I would say at this point, there wouldn't be plans to add those flashing beacons as an advanced warning with the protected, can't get that word right for some reason, protected pedestrian crossing with people being able to cross half the road at a time, we feel is the safety feature that will enable those folks to get across the road safely. So they're only crossing one lane at a time.
Okay, and why could you move it down closer to Tapdera? What would be where it's more straight? Why was that not a consideration? Can you explain to me why that wouldn't work?
Well, I would say in that case, it's a bit of a, and Garrett, you might have some, you can add it after I'm done talking. In that case, you're essentially on the middle of the straightaway where our speeds are highest as opposed to near a curve. And so in terms of the speed, you're actually dealing with a potentially worse situation for its location. And I think that, bottom line is I think we've found a good location for it. I think Garrett spoke well to the left-hand turning movements, so that really speaks to accommodating the future left-hand turning movement. So preferentially, the queuing for left-hand turners would queue on Benham Road as opposed to Murphy Road. Garrett, do you have anything to add on that particular question?
I think the only thing I would add, with flashing, rapid flashing beacons, the first thing you're talking about, or flashing beacons for school zones or protected crossings, or even putting down striping, it's, none of it's done indiscriminately. There's standards around all of this, and those standards get modified from time to time as things evolve and change. And it's the same with this location here. This is warranted because of that future projected growth for pedestrians and the volume of both pedestrians and vehicles that you see at this intersection. And Tapadera doesn't experience that. Benham goes through much farther to the north and collects more vehicles in both directions than what you'll see on Tapadera or Melcourt or Broadmoor or Country Club to the north as things grow. And I guess if that's something that we work with a traffic engineer on all of these, and areas where the city of Bend doesn't have really good standards on this are things that we're working on refining. I bet probably Eric and other people on Old Farm have been involved with the rapid flash on a number of scenarios. I know we talked about it a bit over on the ward development as we were working with Old Farm and other stakeholders on that area and talking about what the appropriate treatments were. So there's good justification on these. It's not something that that hasn't been well vetted or has a city standard that applies. And if there's fault with the city standard, then that would be a different discussion, I think.
Yes.
Sorry.
Is there something, is there a follow-up that maybe we can do?
Y'all fellas, I know it's vetted and everything, right? Benham has also become a drag strip for people. And once they push Chase through, like, I can't let my kids play on the street down on this area. We sit right on a blind corner. I do not agree with this pedestrian crossing being right here. And I know I'm not, like, I don't have all the qualifications of the computer and this, like, I just know this area.
Well, just to push back a little, what you just said is exactly right. Benham Road connects all the way up to Ray, and when Chase comes online, this is going to be a major road. It's not going to be the quiet road that it used to be, but that's just the direction this is going.
Horrible.
I have another question about the modeling. You were talking about growth rates. Since Bend is growing so much more quickly than I think anybody anticipated, how is that being factored into these growth rates? Are these growth rates from 10 years ago or during the recession, or are they like somewhat current?
No, I would say generally that it's somewhat current. So there's a model that's used by ODOT. It's the regional traffic control model that assumes, I want to say, Garrett, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say it's a 3% growth rate, but typically when we look at it for a city project, and I don't know, I can't speak to specifically what we did here, but I can certainly follow up and tell you that typically we're going to bump that up between 3 and 6%, which is pretty significant in terms of actual growth rate. So to have a community with a 6% increase in traffic annually is very substantial and really adds up over the years. Yeah, I know Garrett's pulling up documents as he's speaking. My presentation is taking up my whole screen, and I don't want to jinx it by trying to look up the traffic report. But typically, we will increase the growth rate assumptions from what ODOT assumes for local growth. And I can certainly follow up with what was assumed for this traffic report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good discussion. Again, you know, this is why we come to these. This is, it's important to get the feedback from the folks that live in the neighborhood. So don't, you know, not afraid to take those tough questions by any means. I'd like to think that we have the people like Garrett that can, you know, offer the long-term perspective over the whole course of the project, and we landed a good solution. Let's see. I think I might have been done talking about the Murphy extension and bridge. Yeah, have some things that I'm excited to share with the neighborhood association, and these are 3D renderings of some of the components, particularly the bridge. I think I have 3 bridge slides. So I wanted to share these, pretty excited to share them. I think they're great visualizations. I will say that these are based on an incomplete, so like, again, nature of the beast with progressive design, build, delivery. Things change as we get towards construction and even during construction. We'd like to think that these renderings show the character of the improvements that are going to be constructed. We feel that otherwise we wouldn't share them. But there might be some slight adjustments here and there, but just wanted to kind of do that as the word is escaping me, but yeah, I was more excited to share the slides than I was to, oh, they're not, you know, we're not at 100% design, so I don't want to show those. So what you see on the left is a rendering looking over the new bridge to the west. You'll see that there's a train. Do you actually see my my mouse pointer on the? Well, I'm not sure if you can.
Yes,
but
yes, we can see it.
Oh, okay. I try not to rely on it, but sometimes it's helpful when you're looking at these things. So there is a train undercrossing the bridge. That's that area right there. You'll notice that it is a 2-lane bridge with wide sidewalks. I believe they're 8 feet on either side. Also have the buffered bike lanes on the bridge itself due to the fact that it's a bit more of a constrained environment than the roads that lead up to it. So that's the buffer that you couldn't see in the smaller scale version, but that's a 2-foot separation between the fog lines to create a separation between the bikes and the vehicles. High guardrail, architectural treatment on the walls that face the roadway. And to the right is the accessible pedestrian path, access to the Hidden Hills neighborhood that I talked about earlier. This is a view looking eastward, looking up the ramp that connects with the sidewalk, essentially where the person took the vantage point for the rendering. And then on the other side of it, to the east of the ramp itself, is a staircase. So those that prefer to use a staircase are able to use a staircase, that's an option as well to the east. And the third rendering I wanted to share was an east-looking rendering showing, again, the top of the bridge, wide sidewalks, buffered bike lanes, showing the train crossing underneath, showing some space to the east for a potential future Bend Parks and Recreation District path. Also showing the fill, the large fill that gets the road up to grade as it goes westward from the existing roundabout at 15th Street. You'll also see that gravel road that I was pointing out on the overhead slide for the access to the existing southeast interceptor manholes. And with that, are there any further questions? I really appreciate the discussion and the fact that it's conversational. Anybody have any other questions?
Connie has a question in the comment section. Would you anticipate that the bridge could become a bottleneck in the future, considering the growth Bend is experiencing and will continue to experience? And she also says she loves the buffered bike lanes.
Okay, great. Good to hear that. I'm a bicyclist as well, both mountain bike and road bike. I appreciate those as well. In terms of a bottleneck, again, our traffic modeling indicates growth out 20 years. That's what's required in terms of planning these capital improvements, and it did not show that would be the case as far as having a two-lane bridge over the railroad being a bottleneck. Anything further to add on that one, Garrett?
I think you got most of it, George, as far as it just won't be a bottleneck. And I think the only thing I'd add on to it is just, the issues where we see capacity potentially being a concern in the future, it's typically going to be at our intersections. And so the two-lane bridge here shows, more than adequate capacity for the vehicles that are traveling between, but the areas where we potentially see the need for future expansion is 15th Street and Broster House, and that's 30 years down the road, where you might need a slip lane on one corner of 15th and one corner of Broster House, and we've set those up so that those expansions can be really easily done and programmed into the CIP when that time comes. And just to answer that other question, George, I found in the report that over on 15th Street, we were looking at projected growth of 5.5%. So you were pretty close to right on that one. And then over towards Country Club, it's closer to 2% growth. And that's primarily because most of that area over there is developed out, minus what's about to take hold here on that Ward property soon.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, thanks very much for looking those up. So I was close.
Got another question from Jill asking about icy conditions on the bridge.
Yeah, so that's always a consideration in Central Oregon. It's an interesting question in that we were just talking about that last week with the streets department. The intention is that they, like other streets, they're going to use cinders as much as possible to handle icing. And even the selection of the expansion joint type at each end of the bridge is influenced by the fact that they are intending to use cinders. So we want to select a joint that is going to hold up to that sort of approach for ice buildup. So really, in terms of addressing icy conditions in Central Oregon, that the intention would be to treat it as any other rotor bridges right now, with generally using cinders. The use of mag chloride is obviously an option if it gets really severe. I'd say one advantage of this particular bridge is its exposure to sunlight. It's generally got a pretty good solar exposure from the first thing in the morning all the way through the late afternoon. So does that address the question?
Sun exposure, did you witness what happens during winter with the sun exposure, or is it still in the clear in the winter? Because we do have that tree line. I'm curious if it was monitored during the winter for sun exposure to heat that place up.
No, I don't think, no, to my knowledge, I don't think it was specifically monitored for sun exposure, quite frankly, because there was no other place to put the bridge. So it wasn't like we had another option for locating it. So my comment is really based around the fact that the streets department is going to use the tools that they have available to them to address icy conditions on Ben's roadways, and generally that's two things. That's the mag chloride and cinders. Whether I'm not aware of a full solar study that was done for this bridge location, just due to the fact that there was really on one location for it.
And what was the name of that chemical? Some chloride?
It's called mag chloride. It's a chemical, an ice melter.
Have you guys done an environmental impact study on that? Is that what they use right now?
And I believe it's on a very limited basis. You'll see some in anticipation of storms it applied to the roadways. Garrett, do you know of any?
So there has
particular
environmental impact studies on using mag chloride. Sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. Has there been an environmental impact study on mag chloride? Just side note.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't know if there has been specifically done by the city. I think that's an easy question I can follow up on though.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
We've got a couple more comments. Kent mentions that the roundabout at Broster House is pretty tight for his pickup truck, which kind of speaks to that being our future expansion point, I think. Nancy mentions that a 15-mile-an-hour speed sign should be posted before the Broster House roundabout. And does anyone else have questions?
I think so. The first question about the truck, that was about both those questions were about the Broster House roundabout. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and that, that's kind of the yin and yang of roundabouts. So they're designed to limit entry speeds and exit speeds so that people aren't, going too fast through those roundabouts. Really the most efficient design for a roundabout is one that allows all legs to be able to enter in a fairly equal basis, if possible. And if speeds are too high, you'll get a preferred leg that'll establish a line of traffic through there that due to speed or due to volume that precludes other entry points from working very well. So by design, they are designed to limit the entry and exit speeds for the roundabout. So which also means that the turning radii is one of the ways that the engineers are able to accomplish those limited speeds. And quite frankly, we those two questions are a great example of usually the feedback that we get at roundabouts, that either the speeds are too high or the corners are too tight. And so it is a balance between those. I will say that we do, or not we, our consultants do turning studies to accommodate different types of vehicles through the roundabouts to make sure that we're not designing something that can't accommodate freight traffic, for example, if that's traffic that goes through through these roundabouts. So I understand that, yeah, sometimes these corners are a bit tight, but it's a balance between that and, you know, the speed in the roundabout itself. Did that answer adequately?
Sounds good. Yeah, and I think I saw Colette raised her hand. Colette, did you have a question?
I did. It takes us back to the bridge, the new bridge, and I don't know what the policy is regarding snow removal on bridges and the bike lanes and the walking path, the sidewalks. Is there one other than just putting the plowed snow into the bike lane and into the walking sidewalk?
You know, I think I'm going to have to, again, get back to you on that one. I think the intent would be to plow off the bridge, so not to allow snow to pile up on the bridge itself, and not to dump the snow onto the railroad either. That's definitely part of the conversation that we're currently having with the railroad in terms of the construction and maintenance agreement for the bridge. Yeah, so I think the intent, and I can follow up with a confirmation there, is to get the snow off the bridge.
Because
but not by dumping it on the railroad.
Yeah, it's got a lot of sun there, the snow, and it would end up freezing at night on that bridge if it were to remain on the bridge. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to wrap up this section soon, as we're already over an hour and we have some big land use things to talk about. I see Connie has a question about Reed Market and 15th. Connie, did you want to expand on that?
Connie doesn't have access to a microphone.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we'll try to catch up offline then on that. Just comment about snow. Perfect. All right.
Okay. Yeah, Eric, if you could just, you know, forward that on as an email or whatever works, that would be fine. And I guess in closing too, that I wanted to mention that we're planning on, so with COVID precautions, the city has done on a couple of our projects, and this will be another one where in lieu of in-person open houses, we are having online open houses or virtual open houses. So we're planning on doing that for this GMP5 as well. So that here in the next, I'd say, week or two is planned to kick that off now that we have council approval to proceed. So be on the lookout for notifications for that virtual open house.
You guys wouldn't happen to have the link for that right now, would you?
Let's see.
If so, can you just drop it? Can you drop it in the group chat?
I don't have it. I think, well, it's not live. So even if you had the link, you wouldn't see anything. Does that make sense? Are you just saying that you'd like to have it for future reference?
Future reference.
Gotcha. Yeah, we can share that with Eric and get it disseminated that way.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sounds good. And George, if you don't mind, if you can share the slides, I'll go ahead and put those on our website for everyone else to look at after this meeting.
Okay. Yeah, terrific. Would PowerPoint itself, would you like it in PDF format? What's
yeah, PowerPoint's fine. Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'll plan on doing that.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you, George.
thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And it's nice having Garrett still around to talk about these things, and I see Shanray's on the call as well. So we've got the whole team taking part here, and this isn't the last time we're going to hear about this project. You know, we're going to have some big pieces coming next spring, and we'll probably be talking about all of this all again next year as well. So if you guys have any further questions and you want to contact these guys, the contact information is in our newsletters. If you go to the link included there for the Murphy project, you can reach out to these guys. They're very responsive. Anything else, you can also direct to us at the Old Firm Neighborhood Association, and we're happy to forward the question or figure out what the best answer is and how we can advocate for different solutions. So do get in touch.
Terrific, thank you.
right. Well, we've got a few big things. First up, treasurer's report. Nothing really major there. We spent $120 in the past month on Facebook advertising. That was connected to the 4th of July fireworks safety signs. And we did that in such a way that, kind of created awareness around the signs and helped us get people to sign up for the newsletter and participate in our meetings and everything that we do here. So it's really a drop in the bucket. Our current balance is $12,000, over $12,000. So we plan on doing some more online outreach and engagement and putting some money behind the efforts as well. Part of it is we want to do some diversity outreach as well, so that it's not the same beautiful faces that we see here every time. So we want to be a little more strategic about that, and we have the support of the board to spend money to make that happen. But this past month, nothing really major to report aside from that. I was hoping that Karen, our land use chair, would join. I don't see her on the call. So I'll try to summarize some of the things here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We've got a few items. So let me pull this up real quick. So first up, we've got the flag lot proposed at 2950 Greenmont. We have all of these things posted on our website as well if you need to see the actual notices that go along with this stuff. The location is on Greenmont here. I'll expand the map if I can. It doesn't want to play along. So here we have the location, and this is a large lot being partitioned into, and it's going to be a flag lot, which means pretty much the backyard is going to be a new unit with a driveway going down the side of the existing lot to access it. So far, we haven't really seen that in this area. It's zoned RL for large lots. This is one of the last areas in this part of in Bend at all that has large lots. So this is something that might be happening in the future. So I'll just go ahead and open it up to comments from the board because we got some comments by email on this.
I'm just going to go on record as saying I have had over a dozen people contact me in the neighborhood, and they are very upset about this for a number of reasons. And the whole thing is really upsetting the way it's come down. I have also written to the city in regard to it. And Eric, I think it's really important that people understand that a flag lot is a separate tax lot. This isn't an ADU. This is a completely different situation. So that's all I have to say, or I'm going to go into a rant. So I'm going on mute.
Yeah, and the flag lot it's a subdivision. It is splitting the property into two pieces. It's no longer in the hands of the original owner once that happens. So yeah, that's an important point here.
I would also like to go on record that it's incredibly disappointing to see that this is a potential thing that we'd be looking at in these old established neighborhoods that are essentially full of wildlife. And I think it's so disappointing to see this.
So one of the reasons the city has pushed us to hook up to the sewer is because when we hook up to the sewer, this kind of stuff can happen. So that was one of the major influences on pushing the sewer forward in this neighborhood. But this is the first lot that I'm aware of that has gone to that extent to go ahead and divide it, because most of the people that live here have bought these lots because they want the space, they want to get away from all this nonsense and not feel like Portland. The person that owns this lot works for the city and is on is the engineer for the city for the sewer. So the whole thing has just been really disturbing to people who feel like their trust has been betrayed, and there's been a misuse of city authority. So there's been a lot of talk about that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but the rumors are really big.
Yeah, and to summarize, a lot of the comments received were about that these large lots were impossible to build more densely on because they had septic fields in their backyard. There was no sewer access in this entire part of the city previously, but that is changing now. So they're running a sewer line down these streets. This was one of the early spots to connect. So now they have that capacity. The infrastructure is there to support more. So the concern is that we might see this happening more often. Connie mentioned in comments that there are others looking to subdivide in the neighborhood. So this might be the way of the future, but we're gonna be involved in conversations with the city to make sure it's done in a smart way.
As a born and raised, I do not support this notion. This ain't cool at all.
So let's see. I'll pull up the next one. I wish Karen was here because she's the one that submits our official statements to the city, and I know that she does submit things for each of these, and she heard a lot of the comments from neighbors about this and included that in her official statement on behalf of the Old Farm Association.
I did text her, Eric, but I haven't heard from her, which is really odd.
Yeah.
Karen, yeah, about today, so.
So this next one here, this is not, so just to distinguish up front, you might have seen on the agenda all the PZ numbers. Those are for projects that have been submitted. They're applications that are in the works. This is one in the early stages. It's a proposal. So they held a public meeting last week to give that preliminary briefing to neighbors on what they intend to do here. At this stage, it theoretically could still change before it reaches the application phase. But this is one that we had a little back and forth on with the developers because they used the wrong address to notify us. They had a public meeting a month ago and it went to the wrong address, so we weren't there. So we asked them to have a do-over and they did that last week. I believe Karen did attend that one, but again, I can't speak to it, but we do have all of their meeting materials at the website here. So I'm going to scroll down on the screen share. And this is the lot at the corner of Reed Market and 27th on the southwest corner. That is one of the very few lots that is zoned for commercial development in all of the southeast, apart from the expansion areas, you know, like the elbow and such. Pretty much we have that, something on Murphy, the American Lane stuff, and there's not much commercial opportunities at all in our area. So this is one we all kind of expected to be a gas station. It's going to be a gas station, along with some other things. From the looks of it, it's kind of like over on the west side where the bottle shop is. There's a gas station and a little complex of a tiny strip mall in there. This is something similar to that. There's a little bit of a strip in there with some other services like a drive-through coffee shop. So when I was able to chat with Karen and James DeRofi, our chair, about this, they saw no serious objections. This looks like pretty much what we expected would go in this lot and does appear to be pretty sound approach to it. I think James mentioned something about supporting electric charging vehicles. And that's just a concern broadly shared as we look to expansion on that side of 27th, creating the infrastructure for the future. But otherwise, no serious objections here from the board. We've got an elevation here kind of showing what it's going to look like too. So you can see in the background, there is that little strip mall there and pretty decent parking for something of its size.
I think getting in and out of this is going to be dangerous.
Yeah, that's
Really,
the case
really
for anything
dangerous.
that goes there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And there's no housing at all in this, right? They don't have to put any housing above or anything. Is that right? There's no mixed use.
I don't believe
Strictly
that.
commercial.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think this one is strictly commercial. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but it's that's a really dangerous spot. I was driving through there trying to figure out how they're going to get people in and out of it, and I'm still befuddled by it.
Yeah, and we're dealing with the scraps now, and that's kind of like with Luderman Crossing at 15th. You know,
Yeah,
those
that same.
exits and entries are going to be funky. So
That's a kind word. They're going to be flat out dangerous.
yeah.
Eric, are you seeing the comments on the side in
Yeah, I
regards
just saw
to
that,
the flag lot? Yeah.
Yep. From Connie and from Cheryl earlier about the ADUs. Yeah, we all kind of expected ADUs to go into this big neighborhood, but they didn't really make explicit that subdividing would be something that we can expect. You know, folks hear that it's zoned for large lots and think that it's always going to be that way, but you know, it looks like it's gonna go this direction now.
I do not accept. No. Y'all need to make some noise about this.
And Connie mentioned actually having some commercial development on the 27th corner could cut down trips to go in other places if you have to go to 15th or Costco area. And that's something that we've been advocating. Lisa asks, when was subdividing approved and what can we do about it? I believe that's something that they can do by right. You know, so long as it still fits within the zoning specifications for that lot, it can be subdivided. If what happens, you know, the two lots that are created, if that still fits the zoning requirements, then they can do that. And there's honestly not a whole lot of recourse.
Eric, it will participate if a lot of people got participated in this process, right? In regards to these flag lots, say 200 people wrote in, could that change anything?
Honestly, not likely, because this is going off of state laws and existing city regulations. What can happen is they can change the way things are done in the future, but it's a matter of fairness to the current owner that they have to go by the current rules. And if they retroactively say, no, you can't do that, that's essentially taking the property from the current owner, taking that right to do that. So it's something that they're pretty reluctant to do.
The one thing we did see in our neighborhood was a house that had applied for an ADU, and the neighbors made such a stink that the homeowner decided pulled it because they decided not to disrupt the culture of the neighborhood, as people were really pissed. But apparently anyway. Eric, didn't something happen last week though with City Council about making this even more accessible? Did anybody hear that?
I'm going to get to that. I think that's the next,
Okay.
talk about the code changes. Yeah.
Okay.
And regarding the hearings, it's kind of legalistic with the hearings. If you look at the notices that are put up, and I'll go and pull up the one for this in question. They have this little text at the bottom that says comments must be directed toward the criteria that apply to this request, and failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity, blah, 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 blah. So it has to, you have to call out a specific legal violation in order to halt this. If they're not breaking the law, then it's very, very difficult to stop this motion. That's pretty much the only way you can do it. We've had success, working with large developers when they're doing large subdivisions. We can negotiate within reason because we have some clout, because we represent thousands of people in this part of town. So we can make the arguments, we'd really like to see paths that connect through the neighborhood. We'd like bigger sidewalks and things like that. We can typically negotiate. But when we're talking about single owner properties like this, it's very difficult. And the only way that you really have any kind of motion with that is if they give up.
Yeah. And Karen really looked into this. She was looking for, is it a foot too small?
Right.
She was digging for it.
Yeah. And I got some other emails from other neighbors too that, they're looking for things. You look at the traffic requirements and, infrastructure capacity and on, but so long as they check all the boxes.
It also puts in a sidewalk to nowhere in front of that one house. What the, yeah. Anyway.
Are you, Lisa B, this is again, land use certification sign, the elementary signs for $1 million projects, was behind a tree?
Yeah,
listen, come
that's
on.
one of my pet peeves, and this is something that the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance is actually working on, is making more strict standards on notifications. Pretty much with signs, they have to make a good faith effort to have it be seen, and like if a snowstorm covers it up later next week, that's not on them. That doesn't like invalidate the process. If it's partly obscured, that might maybe possibly delay it as they have to repost it or something, but that's not really going to invalidate anything. Yeah. So they just recently moved it to the front tree. One of my big pet peeves, I lived in Europe for a long time and other places, and you see signs talking about developments, they tell you what the heck's going on there. And they show you what it's going to look like and, have the conceptual plans and stuff like that. So that's what we're trying to push the city to move towards. Developers will push back and say that, it costs money to make signs. Not much. So we are trying to change some of the rules around notification process like that. In addition to the signs, they have to have a mailed notification to all of the neighbors within a certain distance. But we want to kind of streamline and modernize these things. So that's something that we're talking about with the city. I see E. Pear has his hand up. So sorry I didn't catch that. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Ann Perry. Actually, that's my husband's initial and part of our last name, so I need to get that changed. But speaking to the Greenmont issue, I think one of the things that has really bothered people, and it seems a little disingenuous, that lot is listed as a 0.46, under half an acre. And the code for an RL says that there can be 4 houses max per gross acre. So everyone is thinking, well, then on a half acre or under a half an acre, you can't split that and put 2 houses on it. And somebody found, I guess, in the rules that what they do in consideration when they're looking at the lot sizes is then they actually take the street frontage and add that to the lot when they're considering density. Can you speak to that? Because that's what's throwing everyone off. Everyone's saying, well, this isn't legal for them to do this. But if you're going to add the 30 feet, which is half of a 60-foot wide street, to that square footage of that 0.46 lot, then it does exceed half an acre. So then it does make it legal to put 2 houses on it.
No, that's my understanding. Is it's not strictly the footprint. The frontage is included as well.
That's ridiculous. I mean, if you're going to say that my lot is only 0.46, but now for reasons of density, we're going to take the front street, then I want that front street as part of my property. It's just, it seems like they're wanting to have their cake and eat it too. And that's not fair.
Catching up on comments, Jason Kropf just left, but if anyone was interested in contacting him on political stuff, he left his contact info in the comments here. I see Colette has her hand raised. Colette, did you have something?
No, I don't. That was from before, and I guess I didn't take it down. Sorry.
That's okay.
It should be down.
Sounds good. Anything else on Greenmont? We've got a couple more here. So another big one, the Easton Master Plan. This is a big polish development that's going in across the new from the new high school down on 15th. Over 400 lots. I'll pull up the notice, and I think we still have a few days to comment on this one. So this one is going to go to the Planning Commission as they're making some adjustments to the transportation system plan. But this is the large vacant lot across from the new high school. So we previously discussed this when they first submitted the application. This is going to make some amendments. I believe Karen is on the ball. She sent me some emails indicating that. Do we have any comments on this one?
This just breaks my heart. To have all that land that's just been decimated and every tree taken out, and now they're going to do it again.
Yeah, and the request is to remove a planned connector street that goes to the southeast area plan. I am not sure what that entails, so I really wish our other guys were here. James recently attended the southeast area plan committee, so we'll get to that in a sec. But I'm not sure what that means. I hope they're not taking out connections, because that means it's going to force more traffic on the 15th.
They're going to go on the 15th anyway.
And the last part here, I don't have the documents, but Karen had some extensive comments on the code amendments. There are proposed changes to the Bend Development Code and some of the other stuff that goes along with it. It's responding to state legislation that was passed relating to density requirements. Again, I wish Karen was here, but I'll try to summarize. One of the big points that they're discussing, and I believe this is what Dave was working on today, why he couldn't be at this meeting. They're taking input from the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance, and they have the land use members that are working on that piece there. The one piece that Karen was mentioning specifically would allow, I don't remember what the term is now, but it's a form of multifamily housing or
Are you talking the micro housing?
yes, micro housing.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a dorm. You have a shared living space, a shared kitchenette or something.
Like a boarding.
Yeah.
With kitchens that they use together, but they have prep areas alone.
Yep.
Separated. Mm-hmm.
So you'll have separate bathrooms, but a shared kitchen, and very small dorm style apartments. And what it's doing is allowing the creation of that within Bend city limits. There were concerns about how that is supported in the broader neighborhood if it's allowed, like parking and infrastructure demands and so on. So Karen did have some pretty extensive comments there.
I have one comment I'd like to make there, if I may.
Mhm.
my understanding of it is it's not as efficient. For instance, if people had instead studio apartments. Somebody that was on one of the affordable housing groups, not a formal city one, but one that looks at that, and they just are astounded that this is the choice that the city is making, instead of pushing something like more studio apartments, which a couple can easily live in. These are meant for one single person.
Yeah. And another use for these, aside from like, Mount Bachelor temporary workers or whatever, would be like halfway house folks. People like recovery homes and such. I don't think we really expect a lot of this to be filtering out through the neighborhoods. It's just something that they're proposing to allow. I'm pulling up her email. So yeah, they're consolidating development alternatives into a new chapter of the Bend Development Code, which defines mid-block developments, flag lots, T-courts, shared courts, cottage housing, courtyard housing, micro-unit developments, small dwelling unit developments like the cottages, and zero lot line developments. So they're kind of repackaging all that stuff into the Bend Development Code. It's a lot of state legislation that made that possible, and they're just making the city law comport with state law.
I have to just say, it's so disheartening to me to see what is happening. I mean, I understand people need a place to live. I understand all that, but this is heartbreaking to watch these neighborhoods. I mean, and watch all this vacant land just get slammed with housing where you can't even see anything but houses for miles. It's crazy.
Yeah, and what we do have some wiggle room on is how we define each component here. And this is what Karen was commenting on, is things like the floor to area ratio, like how big or how small can that small be relative to the entire apartment complex or whatever. Like how big does the commons area have to be, and how much of the green space do they have to have? So that's what the city has a little bit of discretion to define, and that's what Karen was focusing on.
There's an exploitation of this place happening majorly, and it's like, it is, I agree with you, Beth, it's incredibly disheartening to see, like, turn a quarter and see lots like just completely decimated, all the trees and habitat that was there. And those of us who are here for that reason, that I know that we feel like we don't have a voice, the only way we're going to stand up to this is if we get more participation through the neighborhood associations. The neighborhood associations are the voice, are to act as the voice of the people. And right now we don't have enough participation. So those of you who are here, please tell your friends, tell your homies, we need more participation if we're going to combat this.
I think another thing is that, thank you, Jen. I think another thing is, even when everything is decimated and all those homes go up, the wildlife could still get through. I mean, the deer can still walk through some parts of our neighborhood even, except that all the fences go up and they have nowhere to go. They're going to be walking down the middle of Reed Market, walking down the middle of 15th, Ferguson, everything, with nowhere to go until we just kill them all. I mean, there's just something really wrong with this. I'm going to stop now. Sorry.
It's not balanced, right? It's the goal is to be balanced. This is not balanced. This is we are decimating this place. And the people who come here for the nature and the outdoors, I mean, it's disappearing everywhere you turn. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And Raquel has the right comments. It's greed, greed, greed.
And that's my understanding is that Dave and possibly Karen as well are at the work group talking about this
Oh,
stuff.
I
I don't
bet
know if
that's where
Karen
she is.
is sitting in on that, but I know Dave is, and this is kind of our big foot in the door now to have these discussions. The Neighborhood Leadership Alliance is the coalition of all the different neighborhood associations in the city working together. So we all get to talk about this stuff and say, this isn't just something in my backyard, it's something in backyards across town too, you know. So we're getting more firepower on this, and they're starting to listen, but it's a gradual process.
Eric, how quickly does this stuff move?
This one is going to be up at a planning commission hearing on the 24th. And then after that, it's going to go to a city council hearing for final ratification. So probably early September, it'll be done.
Well, I'm going to make one last comment on this. We've got elections coming up. We've got city council people that I feel are beholden somehow to the developers, and the developers pretty much run this town.
Yeah, and just for anyone that's interested in that, you can see where the money comes from and where it's going to. So if you're curious about certain city councilors, you can go to, it's called Oristar. It's the Oregon Secretary of State's website has a database that you can look up and see, like Central Oregon Association of Realtors. They give $15,000 at a time to city council candidates.
Wow.
Typically, in years past, city council races did not cost that much at all entirely, and that's just one donation now to certain councilors.
Mm-hmm.
Can you put that info up on our website, Eric? Is that?
Yeah, I'll drop it in the chat too real quick here. It is
I beat
kind of
you
a
to it, Eric.
database.
Is that the right one?
What's that?
Is that the right one? I was
Yeah,
on
that
it.
looks like it.
Okay, sorry, I jumped the gun.
I think that's an important piece of information. I didn't even know that was something that was accessible. So
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's a rabbit hole, that's for sure.
it might be good to include that in a newsletter just to get people aware of it.
Yeah, but yeah, certain city councilors last time around got and spent over $100,000, whereas certain other ones I think had like 11,000.
Yep.
Wow.
So, you know, some voices are more special than others, I guess, right?
The world we live in.
Boo
So
hiss. Boo
we got-
hiss.
we got about 15 minutes left to the meeting. I think we covered most of the land use stuff. Karen, I'm sure would have had a lot more to say, but you want to push through committee reports, and I can't speak for Dave, but he's at an NLA meeting right now. Hopefully we'll get a good update later on that. Jen, do you have anything for NART? Are they meeting again?
We have not been able to convene again. I'm going to reach out to them and try to get some synergy on getting liaisons. I think liaisons is a really good idea because I do feel like there's a lot of work to be done here. And if we had liaisons for specific, like we were talking about, HOAs and PTOs, I think we could build a really incredibly strong web, and we could go a lot further as a neighborhood association. So I'll get back to you on that.
So that's definitely something we'll want to do. So if anyone listening in has networks or connections, not just PTAs, any kind of professional associations, community groups, whatever you're involved in, we want to hear about it. You know, we might not have time during these monthly meetings, but we all chat behind the scenes and we can get stuff on the radar. We can always request things to be put on the agenda at these meetings too. And we really do want to reach out to a lot of these different groups. That's part of our, we talk about diversity outreach, but we want to do outreach to just everyone, really. We want to increase the number of people we're talking to. I saw a comment from Raquel in the chat asking about the Stephen Road track. That is not currently within our association bounds, but it probably will be. That's something that we're looking at fixing going forward. We're going to do a bylaw review and ratify new bylaws, but COVID kind of threw a kink in that because we have to have a big meeting and have the entire membership ratify the new bylaws. And as part of that, we want to say that neighborhood association bounds don't stop at city limits, they stop at the UGB. So since we have the Southeast area expansion, that's going to start happening, and we want to kind of shepherd that in, and the stuff on 27th. So we're keeping an eye on this stuff, even if it isn't strictly in our boundaries.
Yeah, so that means that all that BLM land and all the elbow area is up for grabs for a neighborhood association. But like Eric said, we're all over it.
Yep, we're pretty much the only ones that are really positioned to work on that issue, and we have been. We have a dedicated page on our website regarding that specific property. We've got committee members for the Southeast Area Plan participating in those conversations. So, 10, 15 years down the road, that might become its own neighborhood association, but right now, we're kind of taking it under our wing and doing what we can with it.
Just a side note on that elbow, I did confirm that the majority, if not all of the trees will be removed from that area. So just so y'all know, now's the time to make some noise.
Yeah, so that's our next piece, and James is attending the Southeast Area Plan Advisory Committee meetings called CPAC. He sent me a note earlier today about that in order for the development to occur, they must have a massive amount of infrastructure that goes in there. So in theory, the sewer line runs down there now, so it can expand. Add in Stevens Tract and all that, and it's going to matter where they place the stub outs, where they place the connections for the sewer. They might have to put in some very, very costly additions, major upgrades to the sewer down that area.
Which means they'll tear up 27th again.
No, probably not 27th, probably the way that it connects to 27th, but it's going to be expensive. And right now, the owners down there are trying to punt that cost off onto the city, but the city doesn't have the money. And part of it is the big GO bond may or may not happen entirely as it was originally envisioned. Last week, the city indicated they do want to have the transportation bond go forward, but they already skimped on that package. So even though it's a lot of money, it might not cover any of this stuff. So when we're talking about major developments and how you can slow them down or modify them, force modifications, one of the ways that you can force a modification is if it doesn't have adequate infrastructure. And sewer is pretty damn important, as we all know here. So James had an extended comment on all of this, talking about city planning for the infrastructure needs, and it's not apparent to him attending this meeting that they are fully meeting what's going to be needed there, that they're kind of doing this, let's just get it out the door and figure out the details later kind of thing. And he's not too happy about that. So hopefully next month we'll have some more comments on that, but his bottom line is all of you guys who give a damn about trees, talk to Jen and Karen, and give them support for the tree code. As it is, City of Bend does not really have rules around trees. And Karen is a longtime lawyer. She put together a very, very well thought out plan, but she's looking for support to get that passed. It might happen next year with a new council, who knows, but she needs support from people in the community. James also mentioned Avion, that if they're gonna increase prices to offset the work that they do in the Southeast, they're gonna need to put things like fire hydrants out. Right now, they're trying to play like they shouldn't have to.
You
so
see in the comments at the side?
Yeah. Yep. Just getting there. Can we give a list of candidates supported by the neighborhood association? Short answer, no. We're not a 501c3 organization or anything, but we are operating under city funds. So we can't really endorse people. But you can probably tell by our optimism at the talking about the new city council that there's 4 people on city council currently up for re-election. And I think that's a majority all on its own. If we change that, if we change even 1 or 2 of those, that changes the majority dynamics. So I just encourage you guys to look into that. One of our next bullet points is talking about possibly having a candidate forum or a questionnaire to talk about these issues, but it's really a matter of manpower and developing that questioning plan and creating the event and so on. So we're going to talk about it. We've got what, 2-3 months left. So hopefully we want to bring more visibility to the political side, not because partisan politics or anything, but politics is how you change things. It's civic engagement. So we are going to try to find ways to provide you guys all access to this, since normally we'd have in-person meetings and it's a lot easier to get this information.
So Eric, you and I and JD were going to meet on that, right?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance though.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put it back on my list.
Yeah.
Okay.
For those of you who are listening, this is a game of chess. I've been involved with city shenanigans since about October. I started getting involved because I'm very frustrated with the direction that the city is going. This is an actual game of chess, and the neighborhood associations can be a huge player in this game, but we need unity and we need participation majorly. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell whoever you know in town that we need more participation in the neighborhood associations if we really want to make a difference here.
I think the other thing is what we've learned on our street is that if we've just organized our block, and I think even if you can just organize a few people around you and just say, hey, we need some letters written and here's why, and let them at it. And that has been effective, I think, in getting people involved on that kind of a more social friend kind of situation. We really appreciate all you guys that are on the call tonight. There's a lot of names here I haven't seen before, so thank you.
Ditto.
So we've got a little bit over 5 minutes, so we'll try to blitz through the last few pieces here, though we've already addressed a lot of it. We have the transportation update again. So James DeRofi, our chair, is very highly involved with that on accessibility issues and future development, and the what was it called? The advisory committee that just finalized its work a month or 2 ago. So I already mentioned it in passing, but the city is looking to put the bond back on the November ballot. They shied away from it when coronavirus hit. They're concerned about the Deschutes Public Library is going to have a very large bond on the ballot in November. And they're worried that folks might not have an appetite for something like this. So City Council did take a kind of modified approach to this, and they're restructuring the package so that it's still the same dollar amount, still all the same projects. So we're still going to get everything done that we asked for originally, and that got approved in the first round. What they're talking about doing is structuring it so that you don't pay taxes, so that it doesn't come alive until we meet certain thresholds that show that the economy is healthy again. So it's going to put it in motion and pretty much allow them to start planning around the things that are involved. But it's not going to take money out of your pockets until probably 2022 or possibly later. So it's a bit of a different approach, but does still let us get some of these things on the books because this is a 20-year project that they're looking at. So it's a huge package of things, and we did get some big wish list items in this package. We fought for more, but we did get a lot of wins in here. So I think, who knows? This is another thing too, though, that whatever happens between now and November, whatever this current city council does, the actual form that it takes is going to be decided by the future city councils. So when they decide to prioritize this project versus that project or whatever, that's the next city council that's going to decide that stuff. This current city council is pretty much just putting it up for a vote. What happens to it after that depends on who you guys elect. Let's see, had a comment here. Oh yeah, talking about getting the word out. So yeah, you know, we are known among city staff as one of the more active neighborhood associations. So it really matters when folks speak up. Let's see, Beth, did you have anything on septic to sewer? Any updates?
No, other than when this project on 15th is over with, I think we need to send the city and everybody involved a letter about how this has impacted the neighborhoods and how the city did pretty much nothing to stop the speeders and the traffic, and other than send out please don't do this letters. Never saw a police car. We didn't have a slow down sign. We didn't have a radar sign. We had nothing, and we have had hundreds of cars through this neighborhood every day.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I think that they have not done, and we have been the first ones to, we've been the experiment neighborhood in every front. And as the sewer progresses, they need to up their game because they've done little or nothing for the people that have really been impacted by this, let alone all the financial. Okay, I'm going on mute.
Yeah, so Nancy's asking, is this going to be available later? We are recording this, and the plan is to put it on YouTube. I had a technical issue last month, so that one's not on, but hopefully this is going to work and you'll be able to watch us all on YouTube this time tomorrow. It's a huge file, and I need to do some technical stuff behind the scenes, so it won't be immediately available, but hopefully by this time tomorrow, it will be.
Thank you, Eric.
And Lisa's getting to my next part, and I want to give a big shout out to Lisa. She's been really helping us get the slow down neighborhood signs out. With the fireworks signs, we kind of went through our little stash there pretty quickly. With the speed signs, I was able to put a form up on our website, letting anyone request one. So if anyone here still wants one, I think we still have a few. So if you want a slow down sign, let us know and we deliver. Lisa's been the one that's been delivering for us, so really appreciate that.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
You know,
Thank
Lisa,
you.
you'd be a really good board member. Just planting that seed.
Word. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the flasher signs, that's something that Beth has been kind of leading the charge on, is getting the slow down signs, like this is your speed, slow the heck down. So those are the temporary fixtures and the things that we can just kind of put out on the go. But longer term, we are trying to advocate for better infrastructure, like we were talking about with the intersections. We want to have those flashers, you know, so that you push a button if you're crossing and there you go. Similar things with speeding and traffic calming.
So as an FYI, the flashing speed radar sign appeared on King Solomon last week. We have no idea where it came from, but it came the day that 15th reopened, and they put it on the side of the street that goes northbound, which is where 15th reopened. So we've been trying, Karen and I have been trying to figure out who put it there and how we can get it at least flipped to the southbound side of the street, because we're still getting all that southbound traffic. But yes, whoever just wrote that, yeah, there are no consequences for speeding, none.
So just rounding out the agenda, we already covered the planning commission stuff. I wish Karen were here to talk about it more. If you guys are interested, send us an email, and we might even be able to do another little Zoom call later in the week or something when Karen's available to just get you guys on background with what's going on. She's always happy to talk about these issues with neighbors, so don't be afraid to reach out. You know, we can fill you in on what's going on. I'm just not the best person to do it, unfortunately. Under the coronavirus response, we got a mention about how do we get the word out about the political stuff, the election in the time of coronavirus. You know, things are changed, so we are still looking at doing something around that. So stay tuned. If you're interested in helping, let us know. And Cheryl says she didn't get an email through, so I'll check for that. Emails typically come to me or James, so I'll look up into that.
I have a quick question, because I had questions about this as well. Requesting a traffic cop to monitor in your neighborhood, is that non-emergency, or do you have to send in an email request?
I would say hit the non-emergency line first, but I do believe they want requests in writing. Now there is the speed radar sign that we talked about, the mobile radar. There's a sign up list for that, and I believe we got on that, and so there should, right?
So that's the sign that is here on King Solomon that we don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
But it's sitting there. It's a very bizarre situation. So it'll capture a person on a bicycle going 20 miles an hour. We do know that now.
Yeah. All right. So we'll find someone to yell out about that and see if we can get it repositioned. But yeah, that's currently our procedure, is requesting that, and you get it like 2-3 times a year, maybe. I want everyone to be noisy about this though, because we're pushing them to buy more of those. Those cost like $5,000. And as far as traffic issues are concerned, that's cheap. So.
Yeah. One of the things we'd looked at was trying to get one just for the old farm district so that we could move it around street to street, which means Admiral and everywhere we could put it. And we put it in a proposal for the NSSP, which got turned down. But we're still trying to figure out how we can do that. Because if there's only one with the city that is on a trailer where you can move it like that. The other ones have to be attached to an existing speed sign, which doesn't help us within the neighborhoods where everyone is really doing, the scary speeding. So that to have one within a neighborhood, we need, like a little street like ours, we need to have it on a trailer, and the city only has one of those right now that we can request. Okay.
Right, so that's wraps up our official business. Anyone else have comments? We're a little bit over time, but you guys are still here.
Thanks everybody so much.
Yeah, thank you for participating. This is what we need.
Thank you very much, all.
All right, thanks so much. And yeah, just a reminder, this is recorded, so after a little delay, we'll hopefully get it online this time.
Thanks, Eric.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
See you next
Bye.
month.
Stay safe.
Take it easy. Thanks, Eric.